Hello everybody, welcome to the 18th episode of Building the Friends app Android client. My name is Joff and this is Test-Driven Development Screencast. In this video, we continue where we left off in the previous one. So let's take a look how it ended up. So here, we've started a little refactoring in this timeline view model. And basically, we've emerged a class that's gonna have some responsibility where we are gonna it will be basically having the responsibility for delivering the posts. We don't really want to directly work with this primitive here that is available posts, which is basically a list. So we came up with this abstraction, and then we also have a little bit of leftover here, another collection that has to go somewhere. So essentially the goal is to push all this data towards basically up the call stack, towards the tests. We don't want to have data here, and ultimately remove that duplication between this data that we have between the tests and the production code. And then what we have so far are only the positive cases. So we have a here timeline for, and we pass a user ID, and then we fetch the posts for the user and for all users that this user is following. So for now we are focused on the positive ones. However, let's first run the tests. Let's see if we are green, and also let's see if we are clean. So we are also clean, we don't have anything to commit. So let's proceed. So what we can do right now, we can extract this class outside of the timeline view model and inject it. But before we do that, let's maybe first see how we don't really want to keep this low level primitive here, which is a collection. We don't really want to keep it basically here in the timeline view model. And the first step towards refactoring that one is gonna be to extract it somewhere. So let's first, because that's these followings is used here, which is basically filtering, looking up for the IDs of the users that the incoming user is following. Let's extract this into a variable. And I'll name this users followed by, and in fact let's extract this one into a function followed by, and then I'm gonna inline this. Let's make sure everything is still green. So essentially what I've done here is, we are still green, I've extracted a function where this responsibility, this functionality for filtering is gonna happen. We don't want to keep it here, and basically what we ended up with here is like we have user IDs, which constitutes from the list of the user ID that comes in. We wrap it into a list so that we can plus it here, plus the followed by that user. And then here, of course, we can inline this variable, and that should be still working. And now we have an opportunity to actually think about this function here, what's gonna be happening with this one. So let's first check in and then reason a little bit about this code. So I'm gonna say extracted a function to get following user IDs for given user ID. So what I can do right now, I can start, I can extract this one into another, outside from this class, and I can move this one because this one belongs to the, basically to the in-memory user, in the user catalog basically. The user catalog should allow me to get the users, get these followings basically. and then if I push this into the user catalog, then I'm gonna have in memory posts catalog, and then I mean, probably this is gonna be post catalog, some sort of this, because this is in memory. I'm gonna have probably I'm in different implementations, so I'll have to extract interface a bit later on. And then I'm gonna have this user catalog, so these two will have to be injected here. And then of course here I have some business logic that I'll because you know this timeline view model will most probably here will have a responsibility to switch threads as well, and then call make a call to get this. So what I can do, I can also group these two into a function, and then push that function into another collaborator that will inject the catalogs, the post catalog and the user catalog. So I am thinking that far away, and I am driving that way. But the problem is that now I don't really have an evidence that I really need to do that. Because I have only positive cases, I'll need to write some more tests because I prefer that way. So if you, for example, prefer not to do it, fine. You can start emerging right away. I want to delay these decisions as long as possible. So instead of now starting, you know, doing some things that might not be the right thing at this moment, instead I would wait for some more evidence, and in fact I can write more tests until that moment comes. I will do that refactoring later. So for now, let's do just this simple refactoring that I had in mind first. So first, I'm gonna extract this one outside. So move the nested class to upper level. So that's gonna stay, but here I'm gonna move it into domain post. I think that's the package that I have. Yeah, post. And it's gonna be my source. And I'll come back to this one probably later. For now, I am fine. And now, let's make sure everything is still green. And check this in. Extracted the inner class into a, well, extracted a class well, I'm not happy with this name. I've extracted, so reward this commit, extracted instead of standalone class, extracted and in extracted the in memory post catalog into a standalone class. Come on, file. Because it used to be a class anyway. Good. So now I think, as I said before, this followed by, I believe it belongs, I would like to put it into the, let's open the in-memory user catalog. And then here, I think I'm just gonna, let's put it there and see how that's gonna go. So I'm just gonna copy paste it here. For now it is unused. If I run the tests, nothing should be, I mean all the tests should be green because this should not affect anything. And now back here, what I can do, wherever this is being called, is followed by, what I can do is I can say in memory user catalog followed by import and run, and that should still work, and it does. So I can safely delete this one and make sure everything still works. Cool. Let's now check this in. What has happened? Extracted the followings into the user catalog, well, into the in-memory user catalog. Good. Now what we came up with here is this duplication. Basically, whenever we call the timeline for, we are making a new instance of the in-memory user catalog and a new instance of the in-memory post catalog. So that's basically logical duplication. I think we spoke about that before, and we don't really want that. Excuse me. So we want to fix this, and we can start off by pushing this as a constructor parameters, constructor arguments of the timeline view model. So we want the user catalog. I'm just gonna name it user catalog, and now the problem is, again, because like the studio cannot automatically import in the tests for some reason. This is the, I think since Arctic Fox, previously it was working fine. But anyway, I just had to import in the tests, and now I'm still green. So let's check this one in. Injected the in-memory user catalog as constructor parameter, and we can do the same for, well, actually let's first make this private and do a little formatting, and I would like to actually amend the previous commit. And now we can do the same with the post catalog. So what I will do is extract it as a and make that private, and the same should happen here in the tests for the in-memory post catalog, and that should still work. And it does. So let's see now. We wanna do injected the in-memory post catalog as constructor parameter. Good. Now I think everything's fine here, at least for now. So like later on, as I said, here we're gonna have threads switching, and most probably when we'll start working on the negative cases, we'll have some, I don't know, if else, whatever here, or like maybe try catch. But up until that moment comes, I mean, I don't want to do that right now as a premature optimization that I have in my head. Rather, I would like to write tests that will force me to do that. I need this evidence that comes from the tests, and up until that time we can continue with the refactoring here and here. So basically here now we have this data, which is still still as a duplication between the tests and the production code. So what we can do is push this out as also inject this as a this primitive here. So what we can do is we can introduce this as a constructor parameter, and I'm gonna name this also available posts, and I would like to introduce a default value. or maybe not. Maybe don't introduce default value, because I think it's gonna just directly do move them in the it will directly fix my tests here. It will get them in the tests, so I don't have to, all the tests are running. And now I think I don't need this one any longer, and that should still work. And now in terms of the post catalog, all I have here is abstraction. I don't have any hard-coded data in my shipping code, and that's cool. And if we take a look at the tests now, wherever we are instantiating the in-memory post catalog, the posts are coming, and then for all of the tests basically. And that's sort of a duplication that we'll have to deal later here in the test, but for now I think everything's just fine. We're gonna clean up the test last. So let's check this in first. So what I would say is pushed data up the call stack. Post data up the call stack. And finally, what we can do the same here. So these ones, I'm gonna inject them in the constructor. And now I do need the default value. Why? Because the in-memory user catalog is already used in a bunch of places, and bunch of the places in the shipping code and in the tests. And if I don't introduce default value, it's gonna break. I think it's gonna break more than it will actually fix the studio itself. So let's introduce a default value by default and let's see how we're gonna remove that. And then okay, I should have named this also followings, so basically the same as this, and then I can get rid of this one. So I have followed by, and then it gives me the followed by. And here what I want to do is make this private, and if I run, everything should be still working. And it does. And now I don't want to make intermediate commit here because I want to also get rid of this the default value that I came up with. So basically here we have two tests that are having a friendship relationship. Let's reformat a bit. So here, as we can see, we don't have, and here we don't have it, but here where we have posts from friends, we do have to say here in the in-memory catalog, user catalog, we have to do followings is list of a following for, I think, Anna ID. Anna is following Lucy, and if I run, it will work. That's great. And then we can do the same in here. We can say followings is list of following where I think Sarah ID is following Lucy ID. Let's run and make sure it works. And it does. And finally here what we can do is, instead of list of, we can do mutable list of. Why mutable list of instead of empty list? Because this in-memory user catalog is something that that usually holds business logic, but that's something that that most probably will be reflecting how the backend works. So basically, we want to keep some business logic here, and in that sense, maybe later on we'll be adding some followings or removing some followings, and then I'll have to do this additional refactoring. So that's something simple, because here I know that it's mutable map of. I can use the mutable list of as well, just to keep the things consistent. So if I run now, everything's fine, and now I can say here that I have pushed the followings data up the call stack. And then another thing that I would like to do is, because here now I am taking concrete implementations. I want to replace this with user catalog, but the problem is that the user catalog doesn't have the followed by, so I have to first do that. But here I think for the post catalog I can for the post catalog I don't really have an interface yet. And in fact, maybe I can delay that thing for later a little bit. Right, I think I'm gonna do that a little bit later. For now, let's continue here with removing some of the duplication of the tests. So basically, let's see if I'm green. Yeah. So basically here, as we spoke previously, we didn't have a relationship between, like, when we say we have a user, Lucy, and it has Lucy posts, and we have Sarah and it has Sarah posts. When we say here timeline for Sarah ID, we are expecting Lucy posts and Sarah posts. So that relationship between Lucy and Sarah was not clear. But now, as we can see in this test, we are definitely making it clear that Sarah and Lucy are somehow connected. And that's something that I wanted, that I needed. And I think that's something that's really important part of this test. So all these other things, like the posts, for example, and the users, are not as relevant as the data as this one. So what we can do, actually, because this data is repeating across the tests, what we can do, we can extract the actual users outside one by one. So we have Sarah, then we have, I think that's the last test, and then, because I think here it is clear, like there is some, like, Lucy.id, Sarah.id. If somebody, like, when I read the test, if I really need to see what's Sarah, I can just go to the definition of Sarah and see that it is a user. But in terms of this test, it's not as relevant as the other details. So I can do the same for the posts, but let's first extract the users. So these two, and then I have some users here as well. I have Anna, and I think Lucy is already defined. Let's make sure that it didn't break anything. Right, and then I have Tim as well. Let's run, let's make sure. I think everything should be fine, but and it costs me nothing to run the tests additionally. So I'm just gonna move this up here, and I'm gonna make, wrong shortcut. Private. And I can do the same for the posts. Cool. And now what I can do is let's take the team posts and Lucy posts, and what else? Yeah, Lucy posts, I already took them away. I'll take away the Sarah posts. Let's put them together. It should still work. Meanwhile, let's go. Yeah. Meanwhile, let's go and see if there are some others. No. So that's cool. We can. Now I'm gonna just move them as well upwards. So private, private, private. And I'm gonna move all of these here. And let's, for consistency, do this here as well. And now what I can do is this one here, I can extract it as a field. I would say available posts, and replace all occurrences, which are 4. Yes, I want that. And in fact, these posts are actually what I have here. So what I can do is list of, instead of list of, I can say available posts are team posts plus Lucy posts plus Sarah posts. And then I can get rid of this. And that should still work. It does. So when we take a look at this test, we have some users, we have posts that they have, and then all the available posts. But when we take a look at a test, we have a let's maybe do a little better organization here. We have timeline view model that takes in-memory user catalog and in-memory posts catalog. So we don't have any followings here. When I ask for team ID, I expect empty list. Oops, sorry, I think yeah. This is Tom ID. This is a user that we don't have. Let's leave it for now as it is. And then the same formatting here. What happens when there are posts available? For example, for team has some posts. When I have a timeline view model that has that injects these two with all the available posts. When I ask timeline for team ID, I expect team posts. So this test is like, it's quite narrow, quite straightforward. It really describes itself. And then on the other hand, I also want to be able to, I don't want to be, you know, restrict myself in terms of refactoring. I want to be flexible to refactors. I think this is as far as it can get. I think I couldn't think of like making it any better. So it's good. Then I have posts from friends. So I have a view model where I have an in-memory user catalog that takes some followings. So the followings are basically Anna ID is following Lucy ID, and then I have the, let's maybe do it this way, if that's gonna read better. Let's see. So the view model takes in-memory user catalog that has a following where Anna is following Lucy ID, and then I have available posts. When I ask for Anna ID, I expect Lucy posts. because Anna doesn't have posts. And then finally here, I have a in-memory user catalog where I have a following that Sarah is following Lucy ID. When I take the timeline for Sarah ID, I have Lucy posts plus Sarah posts because Lucy and Sarah do have posts. So in that sense, I think this is clear. This is fine. What I can additionally do, let's first check this in. Removed duplication. Additionally, what I can do is I can extract the in-memory user catalog with in this list I can add this following and this following as well, and then extract it into a field and then reuse the same field. I can extract the in-memory user catalog as well, and in fact I can extract the view model itself, this initialization in the before, let's say, where I'm gonna pass those two, and all the tests are gonna work. But the problem is then that all I'm gonna have in this test, for example, is gonna be these two lines. So I'm gonna have a timeline for Sarah ID and then assertion. So in this test, it won't be really clear why Sarah ID returns the Lucy post plus Sarah post. So this following here is important part of the test, I think. And that's why I like it keeping it this way. And additionally, if I do this extraction, it might be a little bit more difficult, not more difficult, but rather it will take a little more effort to do some refactoring. So basically, that might not be a valid reason, in fact. But anyway, I just feel that this is where I'm gonna stop. If I need some cleanup a little bit later on, I can definitely do that. But for now, I feel like this is more than good enough. And I am green. So the last thing that I wanna do is or basically I'm not sure that I want to do that because I don't have evidence that I need to extract interface for the post catalog. I think I'm gonna do that once I write more tests, which means we started with the positive cases. We started with 0, 1, many. If we follow the zombies, now what we have to do is do the boundary conditions, exceptions, extract interfaces, and those kind of things. So in order to do that, we definitely need to start writing more tests to get evidence that we need to perform some steps. But in that case, here, the in-memory user catalog, I don't really want the timeline view model to depend on this concrete implementation, because I do have an interface for that one. So because I have an interface for that one, what we can do here is we can make the followed by part of that interface. Let's see how we can do that. We can say override, and because of course this followed by is not defined in the interface, this doesn't want to compile, but what we can do, we can add abstract function followed by in the interface, and now it is part of the interface. Let's take a look how it looks. So it says give me a user ID, I'm gonna return you back the users that the user follows. That's good, that's clear. And now in here, instead of user catalog, we can say instead of the in-memory user catalog, we can replace this with a user catalog. And now if I run, some tests will break because basically two tests, because I have created stubs. Let's see. Let's move it on the other side because it's a test. So I have some stubs, as I said, where I use the user catalog, and this function for this test is completely irrelevant, so I'm just gonna leave the to do. So if I end up calling it, which shouldn't happen, it's gonna throw an exception. And the same here. And I think there was one more test where I have this tab. Yes. So basically another test case. This is the UI test case. And then I can do the same. So if I realize later on that I can reuse some of them, like if I end up with a more like duplication, now the tests are passing. Yeah, so if I end up with such thing, I can definitely do refactoring, additional refactoring, but for now I think that's just gonna be fine if I just leave this to do here, because what's relevant is this create user. That's basically what's important for this test. And okay, that's maybe one sign or one smell that maybe I should segregate this interface. So maybe the user catalog is not the right place for the followings. Maybe I should come up with something else, but I'm just gonna keep an eye to that one, and we'll see how everything goes. For now I think it's just fine. And that's good. And what has happened here is followed by depend on abstraction rather than a concrete implementation. And basically I think that's gonna be it. Now we can continue working on new tests for the, let's say, the negative cases, and then see how this is gonna evolve, and if we will end up with another collaborators, which I believe we will. This is gonna be somewhere in another collaborator, but for now I don't have that evidence, I don't have the tests. Once I have the tests, we will start seeing how this is gonna evolve. But I think that's gonna be enough for this episode. Hopefully you find this interesting, and you most probably have some opinions on this. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what are your opinions and what do you think about this. So yeah, thank you so much for the time and attention, and I'm gonna catch you in the next episode. Cheers.